Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Zavinski,
And I'm Maureen Crowley.
I'm Todd
and we're
Crawford.
joined by
Todd Crawford.
Todd Crawford.
The funny thing is, they had
This is the side show. You're not allowed to introduce yourself, Todd.
Yeah, but I saw you guys were on Discord, so I just fucking entered the chat. Like, I know you guys were probably gonna record something, so I just hopped on. I crashed.
Oh, that's really good since you're recording and editing the episode. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm gonna record and edit the episode before you guys get a chance to, so that I can be in it.
Oh, shit. That's a good start. We're keeping that then. All right. So in the second episode of Too Cool for Anime Club, we're going to talk about another animated property. This time, a much beloved Nickelodeon cartoon that, as of last year, has been brought to more masses via the Netflix. That is Avatar: The Last Airbender. Not Avatar with the blue people. Is not Avatar with the blue people. If you're looking for Avatar with the blue people, maybe Todd and I will talk about that someday. I don't like Avatar with the blue people. We're here to talk about the bending people, right, Maureen?
Yes, and not the 2009, 2010 remake, but the actual animated series.
Yeah, I mean, the M. Night Shyamalan movie. Basically, if you saw our Death Note episode, equate how much we hated that movie compared to the awesome show. That's basically how we would feel about the Shyamalan movie to this awesome show. There we go. So now we don't have to talk about it. Perfect.
Big mood.
I just want to say, in reference to Avatar, I don't actually like Avatar: The Blue People either. I don't know. I respect the technological aspect of it, but I just don't think it's a personally compelling story. So I just don't care for it personally. But I respect it. But I don't
James
like
Cameron.
Well, I like James Cameron, and I love Titanic. That's a funny thing I was going to say. I fucking adore Titanic, which, is something that a grown man probably shouldn't say. But I actually, just yesterday, this is a funny thing, I watched Aliens for Memorial Day. Because I didn't want to watch, a depressing military movie. So I want to watch, a Space Marine movie. So I watched Aliens.
Well, we have just successfully ruined the intro, got off topic, and dated the episode. So I think we are off to a great start. Maureen, do you want to introduce everybody with how you have come to know this show and when you originally watched it?
Yeah, I consider our little intro here a great success anyway.
Yes.
I know the show, I think it came out around 2005-ish, so it was still on Nickelodeon and everything, and back when I was a kid I was probably about 10 at the time, so that's how I watched it, was just on mainstream TV. And then around 2020-ish, that's back when it hit Netflix and everything, then I rewatched the series. But it was all the time whenever the show would be on, whenever I go to my parents' house and I'd flip on TV, I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's Avatar, I gotta watch the 30 episodes that are currently aired right now. But that's just my experience. How about you guys?
Yeah, my experience is pretty much the same. Started watching it when it started to come out because that was still the era where I watched several shows on Nickelodeon because TV was how you watched things, and I don't think that's the case anymore. So yeah, it was just kind of discovering it on TV. But I will say it may have been the first show, or at least one of the first shows I actually trained myself to memorize when new episodes aired. I think for a while, new episodes were on Friday nights. And I would make sure I didn't miss that shit, especially going into the second season where they started to do the previously on Avatar preview and kind of wrapped you up on what was happening. And the story really became compelling and a saga that was very different for Nickelodeon, because Nickelodeon was SpongeBob and Fairly Odd Parents and Drake and Josh and all these other things. So Last Airbender was kind of uncharted territory for Nickelodeon. So much so that I think Nickelodeon didn't even know what to do with the success of Avatar in some regards. But yeah, that was just kind of my experience. I watched it as it aired. And it was running from 2005 to 2008. And I remember the summer of 2008 very clearly. also because The Dark Knight came out that year, but also the finale of this show. It was just a good time to be a kid. It was a very, very excellent time to be a kid.
Oh yeah. And how about Todd? Have you seen it?
Yeah, like my brother watched the show. I actually just moved out from my mother's house, and she moved in with her second husband, and so I go over during the summer on like the weekends. My brother watched this, and it wasn't Naruto. It was one with the fucking pirates.
One Piece.
Yeah, One Piece, and he had like the pirate Naruto, and he was like wacky,
basically.
And I remember watching that stuff with him. Like I wasn't watching it, but like I was like a teenager, so I was thinking about pussy or something, and he was watching it, and like I remember one time he was watching One Piece, and the episode ended, and he was like, my brother said to my mom, he was like, so the pirates, they did this, and actually the contract they signed, there was like fine print, so they didn't know that this contractually obligated them to do something. My mom said that's why you always have to read this fine print. And I don't know why it's such a vivid memory from my childhood, despite not giving a fucking shit in the moment. Which that show came on I think after Avatar. So that's my experience with Avatar: The Last Airbender.
That's a very tangentially related memory.
Yeah, no, that's a very personal show for me. Because I remember that one moment where my mother gave an impromptu lesson to my brother about contracts from another show that was on roughly in the same 24 hours.
There are some pirates in the Avatar world, so I guess there's your connecting thread.
Yeah, but also speaking of contracts, like, don't you know that, like, I guess if you sign with like your non-dominant hand, the contract is void. Like, you guys remember in like the series of unfortunate events when like the one girl's gonna marry the Count Olaf guy or whatever? Like, speaking on the basis of TV shows and junk.
This is a legitimate story. Like as far as I know, it could be bullshit, but it's proposed as true. Vice magazine, like Vice News Now or whatever, it started as a magazine. What started because the founders signed the contracts with their left hands. It was started in Canada, and they pretended as though they were legitimately like mentally retarded. So they signed with their left hand, pretend like they were special needs, so they would get government grants to start a magazine, and that's like how they got the funding for it to start it.
I don't know how to respond to that story.
I swear to God, that's true.
Anyway, so I guess to give some context about like a little background what the show is about, it's basically, this whole series is sort of set in a world where some people can manipulate like one of the four elements, like in a way it's called, bending, as Eric alluded to earlier, and only one individual known as the Avatar can master all four elements, and like kind of like their main job as a reincarnated soul is to just continue to maintain balance in the world between like the four nations of like, you have like the Fire Nation, the Water Tribes, and Earth Nation, and what have you. And they're also kind of like serve as like the bridge between the spirit world and the material plane. And in this particular like iteration of Avatar, it follows Aang, who is literally like, the last Airbender, and his journey with his friends on mastering like all four elements and embracing his role as the Avatar in order to like defeat the Fire Lord, who's literally just trying to take over the world. And after looking into it, I realized it was really considered groundbreaking for what it was. Like growing up when I was first watching the show, I missed a lot of like the bigger themes of the show because it really tackles a lot of big stuff, especially for a kid show. It talks about like the effects of like war and genocide, free choice and being able to forge your own path, like the negative aspects of like colonialism. You have instances of like female empowerment and sort of gender oppression. Then you have questions on morality and all sorts of really big, heavy topics that are really just didn't get approached in entertainment. Like I know, Eric, you were talking about like how it really stood out and was very different from like the other shows at the time, because it was. And personally, for me, I would say it's like a masterclass on world building, character building and just creating creating a theme in the story. So for me, it's like a solid 10 out of 10. But Eric, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically it and its sister show, The Legend of Korra, which we will probably also make a future episode of this podcast, are my two favorite TV shows of all time. So there's really no point in rating it because I'm right there with you. It's a 10 out of 10. It's a master class. It's a master class in the same sense that Star Wars is for me, and I really kind of equate it to Star Wars in the realm of TV. That Star Wars was to movies for kids, and just for a different era. Growing up, there are these tentpole pop culture phenomena that are also kind of like these moral guideposts kinds of shows for kids' entertainment. And much like George Lucas says, Star Wars was for kids. So the creators of this show have kind of alluded to that. Brian Konietzko and Michael Dante DiMartino, it was kind of like their goal is to introduce young people to a harsh world with a lot of complexities to him, and do that at a young age. And Avatar: The Last Airbender does that really well. After a couple introductory episodes where we meet all the main cast, like the fourth episode of the show is the main character, a 12-year-old boy, coming to terms with the fact that his people were truly genocided, and he sees the corpse of his mentor. And that was on Nickelodeon in 2005. Truly the emotional scope of the show is pretty freaking vast when compared to its contemporaries, if you will. It's kind of stayed the test of time. People are still talking about it just as much, honestly, these days. Over 15 years later, as they were back then.
Right. I agree. I think it definitely aged really well for what it is, and it's like one of those shows that feels truly timeless, and it still held its value over time.
I have a question.
Absolutely. I think a lot of it comes down to the premise of the show is a pretty simple premise, kind of like the four elements, which the show did not make up. The dichotomy, or the what would you call a dichotomy of its four things? A quadromedy of air, fire, earth, and water. But the way it's implemented into philosophy and culture feels like it's inspired by real world cultures, but is also general and universal enough, I think, to have mass appeal.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's two white dudes that made this show with a lot of Eastern influences, so it ends up feeling, again, kind of like Star Wars in a way, where it draws upon Eastern and Western influences. Kind of how it was a samurai and Western amalgamation that was A New Hope in a way. So is Avatar in a lot of ways, kind of this melting pot of culture.
I want to bring up,
but for kids,
a point about that. Two things actually. The first is yesterday. Actually, I read that Lucas actually wasn't familiar with certain things. And I don't propose this to be true. I just read this on a forum, but some of the influences in Star Wars, particularly the Joseph Campbell hero's journey stuff or the philosophical stuff, he wasn't as familiar with as people thought with A New Hope or Star Wars as it was known then. But critics said it was, so then he familiarized himself with it and just let that happen. Allegedly, a biography of Lucas that was authorized from him said that, which lines up. You see certain documentary footage. He has Spark Notes versions of classical works of literature in his office, which I get, because when the prequels were written, you didn't have Wikipedia or whatever as much. It was around, I'm sure, but not as popular. So it makes sense to have Spark Notes, because you might have read it in college or whatever, and then you just want to brush up on the themes or a character. So I never gave him a shit for that, but other people might. But more importantly, and this is relevant to Avatar, is that there's a recent thing debuted on Disney Plus that was some girl that was friends with a dragon or some bullshit. It was an animated movie.
Was it Raya and the Last Dragon?
That's it, yeah. I know nothing about it. It's probably a good movie or whatever, but Lindsay Ellis was formerly known as Nostalgia Chick, made a tweet saying that Avatar's influence is known and how it's influencing other things that have like a Western properties with Asian influence. And it was kind of a very controversial thing that got her in a lot of trouble with her own fan base. And I was just curious what you guys think about that not necessarily that or Lindsay Ellis or anything, but like in terms of Avatar's influence on Western animation, if you guys feel that it has left an imprint, because obviously in audiences it has. Like, I still go to like grocery stores like Target or whatever and see the Blu-ray for Avatar in the checkout lines in the impulse buy aisle. So clearly it's left an influence on audiences. But with other creative works being released, do you think that there's things that you see being influenced by Avatar today by people who may have grown up on it?
Eric, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, I'll go first.
After I say that someone's career was ruined for saying that happened.
What was that?
After I say that someone's career was ruined by saying that this happened.
Yeah, Todd, we don't need anybody else going after long shot, you know.
Yeah, but really I do think that there is an influence there. I think it's because there weren't a lot of other shows that were tackling what it was with such style, but aimed at the demographic that it was aimed at. I think part of the reason why we're talking about this in Too Cool for Anime Club is because The Last Airbender feels your traditional anime in a lot of ways, and a solid one at that, where I think most people think of older kids, teenagers, young adults as like the primary anime audience. Last Airbender was very similar shows that were aimed at older people, but due to the virtue of it being on Nickelodeon, demographic was shifted to a much younger kid audience. Basically how old like Maureen and I were when it came out, like that kind of 10-year-old crowd.
What about this? Do you think that Nickelodeon may have peaked in terms of maturity in its narratives with Avatar? Because like you look at it now, and this will age me because I know this is like 10 years too old, and this is my cultural reference for Nickelodeon, but it's like Fanboy and Chum Chum and shit. Like it went from like this kind of more sophisticated narrative, from what I hear, I haven't seen much of Avatar clearly, to fucking like, you know, I drool on my desk at school, I need something to make me laugh, like Doritos kind of entertainment.
Absolutely. You know, the sequel show, The Legend of Korra, was also on Nickelodeon after in 2012 to 2014, but Nickelodeon really dealt it a raw deal and did not give it much spotlight. Right. So it kind of survived online and now on Netflix. So that was kind of what I alluded to earlier. I don't think Nickelodeon knew what it wanted to do after The Last Airbender, because it certainly was its like storytelling peak. You know, you can't really tell me that SpongeBob has an arc that's 3 seasons long, that they're trying to take SpongeBob as a character from one point to another in a specific set period of time. That's not the kind of show that is, and there really weren't many shows like it, you know, on Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network for that matter. Cartoon Network had some similar shows like Teen Titans or Ben 10 at the time, but I think Last Airbender still was a cut above the rest.
I mean, oh, sorry. No, you go, Maureen. You're more important.
No, not at all. I think at least with Avatar, we had something that wasn't as like after school special morals or anything like that. It all wrapped up in the neat end with a bow. You know, like Dylan and I have been rewatching Teen Titans, not Teen Titans Go, but like other Teen Titans. I'm like, wow, some of these episodes literally feel like they're just so after school special. No, not in a bad way. I think that's kind of okay. But even now with like Nickelodeon, like the level and quality of Nickelodeon stuff, like, I mean, I would watch like episodes of SpongeBob here and there at like current day SpongeBob. I'm like, it's nothing like it used to be, and it's not really anything remotely similar to Avatar, even though it wasn't intended to be. But still, it just I don't know where I'm going with this, but it just kind of lacks that kind of, a lot of the programming lacks like that kind of sophistication and I guess that sort of groundbreaking attitude of approaching youth entertainment like kids are actually people who think rather than trying to dumb it down and create this kind of, after school special. I just got off the bus and I'm just going to watch something while my mom makes my afternoon snack or something like that, like before dinner.
See,
I think since it is one of the only shows that had that level of sophistication and even, continuity. Like I said, with, as the show kind of ramped up more in season 2, we kept watching episode to episode because we had to know what happened next. We had to know if Papa got rescued in season 2. We had to know if Zuko would finally get his head out of his ass. We were kind of strung along by like storytelling instead of just 11 minutes worth of jokes, which to the credit of SpongeBob and other shows, like, have amazing quality for what they are. But it was really the only show that kind of did that, definitely on Nickelodeon. And I think that's why enduring popularity of Avatar is present, and therefore its influence is present, because you have like this young adult in their 20s now crowd have gone back, rewatched Avatar, and now we like it even more. And I think that is a testament to a good show. Like, I liked it when I was in my adolescent years. Now I love it. Like, I think it's better now as a grown adult.
Yeah, I just want to say on the record, like, and Eric, you kind of covered this already, so you kind of made my point moot, but I just want to say on the record, like, SpongeBob was easily one of the best comedies, like, animated especially, since Golden Age Simpsons. I think you say, like, Golden Age Simpsons, South Park, and SpongeBob, the 3 S's, are, like, legitimately the best runs of animated comedy on television.
Yeah, I mean, SpongeBob seasons 1 through 3 are that's the
Like
Hillenburg years, and
A++.
those are fantastic.
Yeah, like, and I get what you guys were saying about, like, the narrative and the overarching plot and everything. But I just want to give a shout out to, like, the sheer level of, like, insane quality. Like, I remember seeing, like, the same episodes of SpongeBob, like, 100 times as a kid. And I still think about things like, you ate my ice cream and now I'm gonna starve. And just, like, random jokes and shit in SpongeBob. And I still crack up. Like, I still make references to, like, coworkers and stuff about Golden Age SpongeBob. And it's still funny. And Teen Titans
Like,
is also a great
SpongeBob and
show, but
Avatar
not quite
for
that
me
level.
really were the duology of Nickelodeon. It's
That's a
like
good
I watch
point, yeah.
Nickelodeon 80% of the time for those two shows.
Yeah, two totally different things. But that's kind of the beauty of Nickelodeon.
Exactly.
Is, like, you could have both those
And
programs.
Avatar kind of gave me what I didn't really know I wanted at the time. And it was more like that continuously running, evolving show. Because I would comfortably say there's 3 seasons of The Last Airbender, but 7 seasons of Avatar, because the Legend of Korra is part of the Avatar universe. So of the 7 seasons of Avatar, I would comfortably say that season 1 of Avatar, book 1, Water, probably my least favorite season. And that's not to say it's bad. I just truly think that the shows and the universe get more compelling and interesting. The storytelling goes along.
Now, are we allowed to get into spoilers here? Because I do know a little bit about this universe that.
Oh yeah, I mean, this show is 13 years old or 15 years old if you count from when it started. So if you want to watch it, don't listen to us talk. It's on Netflix.
Yeah, if you're younger than the show, we'll watch a fucking Minecraft video.
Yeah, don't enlighten yourself.
But, like, no, for real. I know some people that watched Avatar and loved it. And then when Legend of Korra came around, they were excited. Like, I loved Avatar. I don't watch Legend of Korra. So they started, and they're like, oh, this takes place like 100 years later, and everybody's dead. And it's just like a kind of a harsh transition. And I was just curious how that is for you guys. Marina, I don't know if you've seen The Legend of Korra, because you haven't mentioned it, but Eric has. But
Oh yeah, I've seen The Legend of Korra. I I watched it like when it first started airing on Nickelodeon, and then once they took it off, I just kind of like lost interest in it. But and at that point, I was like a little bit older at that time, but I watched it for like the first time, full way through, probably last year when it hit. I think around the time, I don't know if it's on Netflix or not, or I think Dylan and I
It
bought
came
it.
out on Netflix a couple months after Avatar.
Okay.
Everything's
All
on
right,
Watch
yeah.
Anime Online. I don't know what moniker they go on now,
Right.
but
Actually, the first
Yeah.
time I watched Legend of Korra, it was on a website like that. So
no, that website rocks.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. But no, I think I just watched it. I bought the box set for like Dylan for I think maybe his birthday or something, and then it came out literally a week after. I'm like, great, we bought this for nothing. But at least Netflix can't take it away from me that I know of.
yeah, right.
Unless they break in through my window and steal all my DVDs.
They
Any-
might.
yeah.
That might be the next wave.
I just would say Netflix. I signed up for that for a month for Army of the Dead, and like I know people aren't loving that movie, and that movie's fucking awesome. I love that movie. Totally
You're
off
Zack
topic.
Snyder chill now, so of course.
No, it's totally true. No, I watched that movie. I was like, I fucking love this movie, and then I rewatched Sucker Punch because I was like, maybe because I'd never liked that movie, and I rewatched. I was like, I fucking love Sucker Punch. And I'm like, damn it.
Becoming a Snyder groupie, dude.
Yeah, no, it's like
Your
just
mental
like
wolf is rising.
it's gonna be a point where it's like, yeah, I saw like that Snyder dick pic, pretty good.
You're like the like almost famous, like that kid who gets on like the tour bus or whatever for like Zack Snyder. I don't know.
Oh yeah, Almost Famous is a great movie. We should do a
It is.
podcast on that sometime.
Yeah,
I've
I'm
never
sure you
seen
do as well.
Oh, Almost Famous, 10 out of 10, especially the extended cut. That's like top tier movie ever for me.
Anyway, your original question was the transition of the shows. Yeah, for most fans, yeah, it's like a given. It's a high concept of the show and the universe is that, you know, Aang's story, the name of the main character, you know, is the last Airbender show, and then Korra is the next Avatar. So by definition, Aang must be freaking dead for her to be around the next Avatar, you know?
I mean,
No,
I think it's pretty-
Aang, he has cancer in the original show, right?
Oh my gosh.
Jesus Christ, Todd.
Well, I thought he did.
No.
He has a shaved head.
Yeah.
Like all the Airbenders do.
Oh, so that's not like a health thing.
No, he actually does have hair for a little bit in the third and final season. Even
Oh, nice. So he beats it.
it's very off-putting. He shaves it off pretty quickly.
I'm just picturing like Spider-Man 3 Toby Hooper, like emo Parker hair.
I feel like you're projecting the fan theory. You remember that like Nick Jr. show Caillou? It's like there's this fan theory that this bald kid Caillou,
Oh yeah.
whole show is his like dream in limbo or something. Like
That's the Bill
he's a
Cosby
kid who
show,
died of
right?
cancer, and he's remembering his last memories of the time with his parents.
Yeah, no, that's a show. It's like kind of a South Park kind of like looking craft paper animation. It's Bill Cosby produced, I think, right?
Yeah, it had some sort of like watercolor aesthetic to it. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I remember that show. That's really funny.
Yeah, I feel like you're projecting that fan theory onto The Last Airbender.
I think with my family history, I'm just terrified and just projecting my paranoia into everything.
Yeah, I mean,
It's that or
Last
dementia.
Airbender, to our knowledge, that universe doesn't have cancer. It just has war and drought and genocide and sexism. And definitely some Bender racism, which it gets further explored in the Legend of Korra. So there's some good meat to chew on.
Yeah, you can't have it all. You don't get cancer, but
Yeah,
they
exactly.
give you that much.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, to my knowledge, there is no bending cancer, but there might be. One of my favorite things about this universe is it's becoming a growing universe. There's like 8 graphic novels, and there's actually a couple novels featuring Avatar 2 Lives Before Aang, Avatar Kyoshi. I've read one of those 2 novels so far. I've got to read the second one. But it's like a pretty vast universe with like a lot to explore, and that's one of the things I like about it as well.
Same. And as far as like for me with Legend of Korra, like seeing it on TV, like I remember enjoying it, but of course I'm like I don't like it as much as Avatar, and I think that's like can be such a fatal mistake. Is you just compare like everything else in the universe to the original, and I think that's very much like a common thing. I'm sure that happens in Star Wars all the time, and a lot of other expanded universes, and you kind of miss out on appreciating it for what it is. And even if it has flaws, like granted, like I think in general, to me, Korra is more flawed than Avatar is. However, as a whole, I don't think the show is bad. I still think that there are a lot of really solid redeeming qualities and a lot of really good themes that get explored in Korra that aren't as much explored in Avatar. Like a lot more like invested in the spirit world and a lot more invested in the equality and the rights between benders and non-benders. And I think that's really neat to see that explored. That it really didn't have a place like the first time around. Like you really don't see as much like I guess like equality issues with the benders and non-benders until maybe like the final couple episodes in like season 3, where Sokka's kind of going through his like weird phase of being like, well, I'm not a bender, you guys all have a thing and I don't have a thing, I'm just boomerang guy, I don't want to be boomerang guy forever. And
Then he becomes Space Sword guy as well.
yeah, and he has this kind of like sobering moment where he just matures in that way, and it's pretty neat. But I don't know if you guys want to review this season by season, but I know Eric, you alluded to like season 1 like being a little bit of a weaker season compared to those, and I think it is. I think in a lot of ways, just because it's a lot more almost like exposition heavy, but you're kind of jumping around from episode to episode, just really just trying to set up like the main characters and their kind of like you sort of start like you're introduced to Aang, you're introduced to like Katara and Sokka, and you're really introduced to like Zuko being Zuko and nuts and his whole effort to like restore his own honor, capture the Avatar. That's like literally the entire point of season 1, and at the end he learns waterbending.
Yeah, I mean, I think season 1 is still really good. It does its job.
Sure.
There are 20 episodes per season in this show. It doesn't really have much filler in any of the seasons. Even if there's a side quest episode here and there, it's usually featuring one of the main characters growing in some way, and they don't reset as they continue onward. They always feel like they learned the lessons that they've learned, and they continue to carry that. There's lots of good episodes in season 1, even where you learn that the main villain Zuko is not really the main villain. It's kind of like a victim of his Nazi father just being the worst, and how he has to learn how to define himself outside of his quest to capture the Avatar. And I think just Aang's pressure to become the Avatar and learn all the elements, and Zuko's journey. The show basically has 2 protagonists in my mind. I think is a lot of reason why people like Zuko so much too, is because he's basically framed as a protagonist as well. And the 2 of them go through the ringer in book 2, Earth, which is really kind of like the Empire Strikes Back of the show, I think. I think that's why people like the second season so much, is because their character arcs really kick into high gear. I think it just becomes more compelling. I think that's why it's so easy to say the show just keeps getting better, is because it doesn't lose track of the stories it's trying to tell.
Right, and it's very meticulous with detail. Like characters who were referenced in season 1 come back in season 2, and it's very loyal in that way. And I think with Zuko, he has like a redemption arc that continues throughout the entire series. And what I like that's really interesting about like Zuko in particular, like his arc is not like his path to redemption is not linear. And I think that's really interesting. Like you have moments, especially in like season 2, I believe. Yeah, I think it's season 2, where he, has that moment with when he's stuck alone with Katara and she's being all like sour with him, and he's just like, well, um, not wanting to be bad, and he wants to change, and then he has a moment where he can change, and he chooses to attack Aang instead, and then he feels bad. He feels very conflicted. He felt kind of pressured by his sister Azula to like, um, team up with her and everything, and over time, like he sort of comes to terms with like his poor life choices. He splits off from his uncle Iroh, and kind of has his, I guess, his own path. And he literally does say for the longest time he is trying to find his own way. And I just really, again, I really appreciate that they didn't just have it like he gets a little better each time. It's more of like he gets better and then he becomes totally garbage again, and then he gets better again, and it's sort of like zigzags around until he eventually levels out.
Exactly. I mean, it's a freaking roller coaster. Even in season 1, there's that moment where the other villain, the Admiral Zhao character, kidnaps the Avatar. Of course, Zuko doesn't want that to happen, so he disguises himself as a blue spirit, this thief that sneaks in and frees Aang. Obviously, it's for his own gain at that point in time, but there's a moment where Aang is like, he's like waking up after they've just barely escaped, and he, gets knocked out or whatever. And Aang is like, hey, we could be friends. And Zuko is like, nope. I think I had that the other way around. Zuko gets knocked out, and Aang's making sure he's okay. Zuko is, immediately tries to attack him, and that doesn't work out. And then the second season, his uncle says, like, hey, we don't have to be bad people. You can, let the Avatar have his bison back. You have to do what you want and not what your father wants. And he does free the Avatar, but then in the next episode, he is like physically convulsing because his body doesn't even know how to react to doing the right thing.
It's kind of reminds me kind of like Inception. That scene where Cillian Murphy is in like that fake out memory or whatever, and he's just like, I know, Dad, you're disappointed that I couldn't be you, and he's like, no, I'm disappointed that you tried. I think that's a lot of like he's trying to please someone who he just can't please. And I think it's a lot of his arc is just him coming to terms with that and accepting that his essentially your father, like who's like one of the primary figures in your life, is just not going to accept you.
Right.
And prioritizing doing the right thing and finding the sort of community in that.
That's why it's such a cathartic thing, like by the middle of the last season, where he like stands up for himself and shoots lightning back at his father. I'm just like, oh, that is just like, as a kid, when you've been looking forward to completion of a character arc over like 3 years, it was one of the first experiences I had with television that was like such pure catharsis. Some of the things that happen in Avatar as the show goes along, it's like you wait for this stuff to happen for such a long time. You don't realize how impactful that is when you're a little kid and you haven't really spent much time with quality television yet.
Right. And I know another thing I want to touch on, especially like the biggest like plot of season 3, is like Aang trying to come to terms with and wrestle with the decision on like how to stop the was it Fire Lord Ozai? Like he's trying to like grapple with, do I kill the guy? Is that when at 12 years old am I going to murder a man? And then Kyoshi's just like, yeah, do it. And I'm like, no, you're not the person we should go to for advice. But like, and that sort of morality of taking a life, and when's it okay? And he's really deeply torn apart by it. And I think that again, for it being a kid's show, I'm like, that's heavy, that's rough, buddy. And towards the end, he knows that he has to do like what he has to do to end the war, and then using like his abilities, the Avatar, to like remove his bending. And that's sort of like, not everything's black and white, not everything is like kill or don't kill. It's like there has to be another way to solving a problem rather than just straight up resorting to violence in order to make solutions.
Right. And it's like how the main character stays true to his culture, even if his past lives are advising him to do something different. And I think that's just another way that the show is empowering for kids growing up,
Right.
just like it's empowering for Katara when she stands up to the North Pole sexist pigs, and they're like, "Well, women don't waterbend because they're women," and she's like, "Fuck that," There's not a lot of things that you can be exposed to when you're 8 years old that have like that message, and it's like confronting you in media. Certainly was one of the first things that I can remember being that young and being like, oh, before you even know what the word sexism means, like you get confronted by it. And that was a season 1 episode too. Even from the early days of the show, it was slapping. It was hitting hard.
Yeah, and even with like Sokka and him criticizing like the Kyoshi warriors and saying like, oh, you guys are a bunch of girls, you're weak, you're this, you're that, and then they totally like kick his ass and everything, and he eventually has like he learns from that like very sobering experience very quickly. He has like a newfound respect for girls, and he falls in love with the one Kyoshi warrior. Her name escapes me right now, but
Suki.
Suki's incredible, and she comes throughout the show, and every time I see her on screen, I'm just like so happy to see her, and I really love what they've got going on. And again, like a character who learns, he starts off kind of sexist, and it's just kind of how he thinks, and I'm guessing some of that North Pole influence is probably there, and how he has sober experiences, so he's not like totally irredeemable in that regard. And I think as far as like this whole show being very much a masterclass in like world building and character building, from like a world building aspect, I could see it's very immersive. Like you have like your own different name for like all the animals. You have sky bison, you have like the flying lemurs and everything, that fun stuff. Like it's very immersive, and it's not necessarily entirely expository. Like you have the literally opening theme of the show is just Katara like explaining the whole general thing in a nice neat little bow, but you're not being weighed down. It's not like Game of Thrones where you have like the entire first half of the chapters explaining the context of like why Ned Stark is Ned Stark or anything like that. And I appreciate like the devil's in the details, I guess. And I really, really immensely respect that. And as far as like character building goes, like I really think with every character from like Sokka to Zuko to even Azula, who's just kind of like a very minor character, like outside of Firelord Ozai, I would say no character is completely irredeemable. They all have like their motivations that sort of evolve over time in some aspects. Like with Zuko, he kind of starts off wanting to hunt the Avatar, then he becomes his own person, and then each person has their own like fatal flaws and sort of like a saving grace. Like with Azula, like her fatal flaw is that she's really intense and really very crazy and very has paranoia and such, but towards the end you really feel bad for her. You kind of realize she's just a product of her environment. Like if you were raised in this kind of like totalitarian mindset, like it really can interfere with your ability to empathize with other people. And I like that they just, for most of the characters, they give you just enough that allows your mind to like fill in the blanks on like backstory, maybe who characters really are. Like I didn't have to sit through an entire season of Iroh to get a sense of what kind of person he is, if that makes sense.
Right. They're very good at crafting character defining moments. I'm surprised we went this long without mentioning Toph,
Right.
who doesn't come about until season 2, but from her very introduction, like just one episode, you basically understand all the things that are important about her. Is that she's very headstrong and very talented, but she's also blind. So she's been coddled her whole life, even though she doesn't need to be. But her family, assumes that she has to be. So that alone, all of that exposition is given out very swiftly, and it just underlines really everything that her character does for the next 30 plus episodes. Her discovering metal bending, which nobody's ever done before, because it's this refined, purified bending that people haven't really had the concentration for, but she does because she's talented, but her blindness is also an asset because she can feel the earth in a different way. So even in that way, the show is empowering for people who have disabilities.
Right.
Just kind of and she's like a very not non-typical female supporting character. She's not like the beauty standard, and I think just having a character like that, I think, was inspiring for a lot of people back then.
Oh yeah, exactly. I love her character, especially in like season 3 when the Fire Nation does that play, and like everyone else is so like upset about how they were casted, and Toph's like, her character on stage is like cast like this, what's 6 foot tall, like really like buff guy. And she's like, I love it. And she's like, they could have picked a better. Because I think Dylan made this point when we watched the episode. He's like, yeah, that's just kind of how she sees herself, as like this, badass, like tough kid. And I love that sort of confidence about her. And, as going back to like how she was coddled and everything, like, you don't need to see like 7 or 8 episodes just going back in like Toph's past to sort of show like how frustrated she is with her parents for treating her this way. Like, Avatar did a great job in like 2 or 3 episodes, sort of demonstrating like a lifetime of history with that kind of like how she feels about the way her parents treat her and how she wants that independence to be taken seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And the show basically just again, it doesn't really have filler. Even when characters return, they return for a reason. I think one of the best characters that does that is Jet.
Yes.
He's in one episode in season 1, which is one of my favorites in season 1, where he's like this swashbuckling hero and he's fighting for the rebels and he's doing all this stuff. Well, then you realize he's become so jaded in his fight for freedom that he's willing to kill some people, make it seem like the bad guys did it so that they basically lights a fire under people's asses to resist the Fire Nation more. And obviously that's too far. And Sokka is actually, who's been pretty immature thus far in the show, is the one to put those puzzle pieces together and stop them, from blowing up this dam that would flood a town. And that's like a turn that this very charismatic character took. It's upsetting. Right. Then he comes back later in season 2. Everybody is justifiably pissed to see him. Not very happy about it. Then they could have just stopped there and just brought him back for shock value. But season 2 has this whole arc where there's this shadow government controlling this 3-ring city that has a lot of poverty. And they're basically lying about the existence of the war so that they can basically be an isolationist society and not have to walk around with it. So part of the whole idea of being isolationist is mind controlling some of its citizens, and then Jet gets mind controlled and he ends up getting killed by the bad guy, and the heroes can't prevent him from dying. And he was like this close to redemption. He just dies. And that's it's premature.
Yeah, and it's kind of like another reason why I think like Avatar is such a masterclass, like character building. Like it really does have like give like a nuanced look of like the good and bad in everybody, because with Jet, like in season 1 when he's going to blow that dam and everything, he thinks in his mind he's doing the right thing. He's like, I understand the cost and I understand that it's tragic, but seriously, this is how we stop the Fire Nation. Like he's very convinced in his resolve, and then you realize, hey, he's actually not a bad guy for being someone who's like considered conventionally attractive and charming and very charismatic. And he brought people together, and he's been very, like you said, jaded by his circumstances. Like, you can kind of see how he resents the Fire Nation as much as he does, especially like in season 2 when he gets like super paranoid about like, pointing out like Zuko and Airbenders. And we got some really great memes about that.
I was gonna say, yeah.
We got some really awesome memes, but like, he kind of has like this moment of being a good guy towards I think that end of that whole arc with Ba Sing Se, and then he doesn't really get the full catharsis of that. It just kind of gets cut short, and I think that's in some ways like even more, I guess, nuanced than letting him have like a full on Zuko moment, where it's like Zuko has like a full on redemption episode, like this whole his arc comes to a conclusion, but Jet's just kind of doesn't, and I think that is pretty powerful.
And it's around the same time that Zuko is trying to get redeemed too. So I think in a way, I really wasn't smart enough as a kid to think of it this way, but in a way, it's almost parallel with Zuko. It's like, yeah, life is short, and you could end up making the wrong decisions, and that those wrong decisions end up being your last decisions, and then that's how you're remembered and defined.
Right.
It's kind of like this forewarning to the audience, because like, yeah, that character death doesn't really affect Zuko, but I think it is kind of meant to parallel that other character's journey that way.
Right.
There's just so much going on emotionally in this show. There's a lot riding on just everything that happens episode to episode. It's a ride.
And I do love the fact that, each part of the show contributes to the whole. Like, the whole goal of the series is to get Aang and the Fire Lord in the same, vicinity. It's like he has to. The whole point of him going season by season, and for some reason I thought it was 4 seasons, but it's only 3. Going season by season, mastering all the elements and having all these adventures and fun on the way, is in order to achieve this goal. And every aspect of the show contributes to that bigger whole. Even like some of the more like minor characters like May and was it Tylee? They all like in their own way like contribute to like this whole just story that the show makes up. And with that being said, I guess I do have a question. I've seen on like especially last year, like on Facebook, everybody was wanting to see like a reboot of the series with all the characters as adults. Not quite like shortly after Avatar, but sort of between like Korra and Avatar. Like, do you think you would like to see that kind of a reboot, where they're just
Yeah, I
adults?
mean that would be interesting. Kind of like a side sequel in a way, because it's between 2 other shows. I think it's possible, especially considering that Avatar Studios has just been founded and they're going to be making new Avatar content, Avatar universe content, which could be movies and TV shows to the foreseeable future. That being said, part of me wonders if an arc told partly through flashbacks into Aang's life in The Legend of Korra Season 1 is perhaps one of the more interesting things that happens in their adult lives, and they already did it, in The Legend of Korra, for example.
Yeah, I can see that.
But not that there's not a ton of storytelling to create. I mean, for instance, there are 6 sequel graphic novels to The Last Airbender, and they're in order, and they like span the year after the 3rd and final season. There's a lot of content there. The Promise, The Search, The Rift, Smoke and Shadow, North and South, and Imbalance, and they might make even more. And they all tackle heavy themes. They Republic City, and really kind of tie the 2 TV shows together. One of the graphic novels also does deal with the famous, where is Zuka's mother question. So that actually does have a canon answer. It's just in a graphic novel format. There is storytelling, outside of Avatar the show with the same characters. So it'll be interesting to see if they continue to just do that route or to actually make more animation.
See, I've been kind of on the fence about this. Now, I had this thought. Granted, it was like at 10:30 p.m. today, so I only have about 15 minutes worth of thought into this. But I think it'd be kind of neat to see, like, instead of doing like a reboot with all the characters of adults for like a TV show or like a movie or something, like just do like Avatar only around like modern era, like 2021ish, or even like in the past like 5-10 years, or even like 5-10 years in the future. Like I want to see, it'd be interesting to see like the Avatar struggle with relevancy and sort of struggle with their role as the as the Avatar are trying to maintain balance in like modern society, because that's something you get a little bit with especially in season 1 with Korra, when she's sort of struggling with what part she plays in the as the world becomes like more and more, I guess, industrialized. Like they sort of had like being a bender's kind of losing its magic. Like I would like to see a society where the Avatar is literally existing, where nobody cares like that the main character is the Avatar, because nobody really like reveres the magic of the world like the way they used to, which is kind of an interesting aspect you see in Korra, but again doesn't really get elaborated on. And you like with Korra, you kind of see like the transition of modern society. I'd like to see it completely there and just feeling like you're quite literally an old soul struggling to fit into a world that like you feel is superficial, and having like this quest of just longing for meaningful connection. And I think it'd be really neat, like at least for like the first season, if this is going to be a show, or at least the first active like film if it's a movie, like all the characters are literally tropes or like some kind of stereotype, very flat characters, like very static, not moving. And that's kind of mirrors how like the main character sees everybody. And like the main character is the one who's like the most dynamic and the most and then like over time, as they begin to the main character begins to learn how to relate to people, like the characters become more and more fleshed out, so that by the end of the series or by the end of the movie, like they're all as dynamic and as rich as like the original Avatar characters. That's all I got. That was like 15 minutes, but
it's a good sequel pitch. Is that your Earth Avatar show after Legend of Korra?
You know it.
Right. I mean, that's kind of a popular discussion point too, is if they do make a third show, it's like, well, if they make a third show, they have to make a fourth show to complete the Avatar cycle of the elements.
Yeah, I just want to see like this earthbending Avatar just being like completely like burned out in their 30s and just being like, well, what do I do?
I mean, it would actually kind of connect thematically, because like Earth is very connected. Say maybe the Earth Avatar is very connected to the Earth and the spiritual side of the Earth, where the actual Earth itself is kind of grown less interested in it, and like the humans have grown less interested in that side of things. So thematically, that could fit well.
No, I can see that. Oh my gosh, did we just like write like series 3 of this, like the third iteration, like right now?
Exactly. I will email Brian and Michael tonight, and I'll copy you on it.
Oh, thank you. I'll attach my legal pad notes and scribblings as like an attachment.
Yeah, we'll scan those in. But yeah, no, I mean, I think this is a show that is, The Last Airbender specifically, I think is a show, talked about generally in broad specifics, because the 3 seasons, they just are one unit. The Legend of Korra is kind of, each season is its own story, kind of.
Right.
There's still obviously character growth that goes from season to season, but I think The Last Airbender, more so than its sequel, is really about one hero's journey that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. You know that, like you said earlier, Maureen, want to defeat the big bad guy, and you know that like 6 episodes into the first season, and then the last episode of the last season ends in that fashion. So I think Last Airbender is simplistic in that way, where its general plot is pretty much A to B. But there's just a lot of growing that needs to happen to get from A to B. which is where the maturity and the sophistication comes in.
Right. And it's very cohesive, especially, you know, compared to Korra. And like, again, I think Korra does explore like a lot of really good, interesting themes that you don't see much in Avatar, but I will say I really do appreciate how cohesive it is. It's kind of like your Friday Night Lights, like season 1, like the whole point of the season is just to get to state, and each episode and each character interaction, each scene, just in some small way contributes to that. And I think, you know, doing that only for an entire show is pretty impressive.
Right. No, I think anything for capturing the demographic that it was going for, it needed to have that kind of overarching continuity there, and that singular kind of motivation. Defeat the bad guys, defeat the Empire, defeat, you know, Sauron, you know, basically.
Inner demons.
Yeah. Then explore all the more interesting thematic stuff along the way.
Oh, yeah. And they say it's all about the journey. And that's all I got.
It is, yeah. I mean, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen The Last Airbender, I don't know what's wrong with you at this point.
Yeah, we spoiled it for you.
Definitely a two-pronged party recommendation from us. Do you have any wisdom, any insight to share?
Yeah, if you haven't seen Avatar: The Last Bender, you're a fucking idiot.
Exactly, Todd.
And
I don't think there's any better note to end it on than Todd's Uncle Iroh moment right there.
Yeah, I would just cut it off there. I'm going to be at like 1 a.m.
Yeah, there was this fucking person that didn't see Airbender in high school, and they were actually hit by a train, and like they lived, but nobody visited them in the hospital because they were a fucking idiot, and nobody knew what to talk to them about because they didn't see The Last Airbender, so nobody really cared.
This is Tucker Carlson.
If you haven't seen it, like, that's you.
Maybe if he could have earthbended, he would have been saved.
If
By
he could
his,
have train bended, he could have changed the tracks.
Yes,
Or
train
like
bending is
created a
the fifth
path
element.
around him. Just a little swerve.
Oh my gosh.
At this point, I'm just impressed Todd is still awake.
Same. Me too. I'm impressed I'm awake still.
Well, Maureen, I know that there'll be a me and Todd episode before the next one, but if you're interested, we can discuss the Legend of Korra next time.
Heck yeah.
Sounds like a plan. Well, this has been Eric Zavinski.
And Maureen Crowley.
And Todd Crawford.
There you go. I let you do it this time. And we've been Too Cool for Anime Club. We'll see you in the next episode.